Just quickly, time's almost running out. The Australian Law Reform Commission inquiry into Christian schools. Is there something we ought to know that's continuing to hit the headlines or not hit the headlines as they should?
Yeah, so the Australian Law Reform Commission, so most people talk ALRC, so that's what I'll say to the point of the time. So the ALRC recommendation to the government now that has come out in a discussion paper would actually, if it was followed to the letter, it would really see the end of Christian schools, religious schools in our nation. So what the ALRC is recommending is that Christian schools would not be able to employ somebody, or they would not either be able to really make the ethos of the school completely Christian. So they would have to, alongside teaching Christian beliefs on sexuality and gender, they have to teach ideas that are completely opposite to Christian views on sexuality and gender. And so, yeah, we're trying to help people contribute to this discussion paper. There's a survey that is on the website, and the government website, the ALRC website. So we're trying to help coach people on how best to answer that survey. But also there's calls for submissions, and people can write a submission as well. But, this is an issue that really hits home to a lot of Australians, and not just religious Australians. There are many Australians who want their children to go to a Christian school because of the ethos that is there. And this would be completely, the right for parents to send their children to a Christian school would be removed if the ALRC had their way.
As you say, it could spell the end of Christian schooling in Australia as we know it. And Wendy, webinars are a great way to get a little more depth. I feel like sometimes we're just touching and scratching the surface when we get an update each week on these things and the ALRC recommendations. Let's talk about a webinar or two you've got coming up. If people are participating in those, what sort of things would they expect to hear? How long do they go, the webinars? And what sort of person is likely to respond?
That's great. Thank you, Neil, for that. This Wednesday and Thursday night in the evening, depending on where you are in Australia, but 7 or 7:30, where it'll be an hour and a half max. I'm always pretty good on timing. So an hour and a half. And what we're going to do is actually walk through the survey and explain what the questions actually mean, and allow people during that time to fill out the survey while they're online. And we will give like 3 or 4 minutes for each question for people to go away and actually fill it out and then come back and still listen. So it'll be on the whole time. So it won't be an intrusive thing into their evening, but it will be an assistance to people to be able to actually do this survey. It's such an important thing for the good news stories to get out there, because we know that there are many people who are pushing very hard for the end to Christian schooling. And whether or not you yourself have been involved in Christian schools, we have to say that this is a really important way of salt and light in our nation for the children who are attending Christian schools, many of whom are not necessarily believers themselves, but who are seeking that sort of ethos to be able to soak up in their early days of life. So it's an important thing for every Australian, certainly for Christian Australians, and we would love people you just go to the ACL website and you can get the link to actually attend that Wednesday and Thursday nights.
Well, I know there's a lot of people. We get to the end of a segment where we talk about these things that are really challenging on the agenda politically, what affects Christians, what affects the freedom of Christian schools, the freedom of churches to be able to teach what the Bible teaches, these things under threat. And so for listeners who want to participate in that sort of webinar and find out how you can actually take some action, lots of action you can take, as we mentioned when we were talking about those conversion laws, but around this one, very, very important. The ACL website is acl.org.au, Australian Christian Lobby, and you'll find a link there for that Australian Law Reform Commission inquiry. and how you can join in those webinars, how you can participate in that survey. So the website, easiest one to remember ever, acl.org.au. Wendy Francis, National Director of Politics at the Australian Christian Lobby. Wendy, thanks so much for a great update once again today on 2020.
Thank you, Neil, very much. Thank you to you and your listeners.